Long before settlers filled the valleys of western North Carolina, there were stories. Stories told by the Cherokee. Stories written down by early governors. Stories of a people who were here before. They were described as pale, light-eyed, unable to see well in daylight, and living in fortified towns of stone. Settlers would later call them the Moon-Eyed People. But the question is not whether the legend exists. The question is what it preserves. This is Echoes of the Blue Ridge. I'm North Carolina Realtor Ryan Phillips. Accounts of a mysterious earlier population appear in multiple early sources. One of the most cited comes from John Sevier, who in 1810 wrote about ancient fortifications in the mountains and traditions of a white people who had once inhabited them before being driven out. Cherokee oral tradition also includes references to a prior group living in parts of the southern Appalachians before Cherokee consolidation. Now, here's the careful part. Legends evolve. Descriptions shift. Settler retellings distort indigenous memory. So we must separate three layers. What the Cherokee tradition says, what early settlers wrote down, and what archaeology supports. Archaeology confirms that multiple cultural phases existed in the southern Appalachians before the Cherokee political identity emerged. The Pisgah phase, earlier mound-building societies, regional chiefdom networks. We know population shifted. We know fortified towns were built and later abandoned. We also know alliances and absorptions occurred over centuries. There is no evidence of a lost medieval European colony in the Blue Ridge. But there is evidence of earlier mountain societies whose identities changed over time, and that matters. Now here's where we step carefully. Spanish records from the 1500s describe the Chicka as fierce, independent mountain people. After the destruction of Fort San Juan in the inland Spanish collapse, references to the Chicka fade. They do not reappear clearly in later colonial political structures. It is possible, again possible, that some of the legend of a prior distinct mountain people reflects memory of groups like the Chicka or related societies who were absorbed into later Cherokee identity. Over generations, absorption becomes ancestry. Ancestry becomes story. Story becomes legend. And legend preserves difference long after political names disappear. That does not mean the Moon-Eyed People were medieval Welsh explorers. But it may mean that memory of a pre-consolidation mountain people survived in symbolic form. History erases names. Oral tradition preserves impressions. In the 1800s and early 1900s, some writers attempted to connect the Moon-Eyed People legend to pre-Columbian Welsh explorers. The evidence for that theory is extremely thin. No artifacts, no verified inscriptions, no material culture connecting Wales to the Blue Ridge before Columbus. We have to say that clearly, but dismissing the legend entirely misses something important. Legends are not transcripts, they are containers. They preserve the fact that someone was remembered. What if the Chicka were not the beginning of the story, but the last written name of a people already remembered in mountain tradition? If you walk through the mountains today and encounter old fortifications, earthworks, or unexplained mounds, you are seeing layers. Not mystery in the supernatural sense, but mystery in the historical sense. Identity is fluid over centuries. Earlier societies may have become Cherokee. Memory may have reshaped itself into story. The mountains do not tell us everything plainly, but they do leave outlines. If the Moon-Eyed People were remembered long before the Spanish arrived, and if the Chicka were one of the last recorded names of a mountain people who then vanished from a written record, then perhaps the story did not end in 1568. Perhaps it only changed form. History preserves fragments. Legend preserves memory. And sometimes the space between the two is where the deeper story waits. Next time on Echoes of the Blue Ridge, we step beyond the documents and into narrative, into a reimagining rooted in the mountains themselves, a story inspired by the historical Chicka. a story born from silence in the record, the legend of the Chiskas. Until then, listen carefully. The echoes are still here.